Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are watching this. My name is Joshua Hale, and today you're joining us on Do It Live podcast. Today we're joined by Tyler, Tony's back there, Lisa's back there too. We invited the whole student body to pop in and join us today. We don't have a whole lot to cover in this last week, just because there's a lot of things boiling on the back end, but we do have a few clips to go through, and then we're going to talk about kind of where we're at after 12 weeks of autonomy and what projects we got cooking on. So do stick around for that. But for kickoff, last Sunday, we had question and answers, and Jim Hood joined us for that question and answer because he's been working on a project called Test Drive Your Future. It is a course for people that are transitioning from high school into a career, and this course gives you options. It gives you a landscape of choices to be able to move forward into something that you want to do, that you can afford, and something that's not going to end up with a lot of debt just from making mistakes in your choices and getting there. And Jim Hood joined us on the podcast, or on the question and answers, and we got to talk about his marketing funnel that he's put together. I've had the privilege to help him out along with Kara from AUTONOMY, help him out with that. And here's a clip of him going through the funnel that he has created, and then we all got to strategize on next steps for his next moves in marketing. So here's a clip.
So what we've got happening now is most kids going into school spending 5-6 years getting a bachelor's degree that won't get them a job anyway. Then they graduate with a 6-figure debt, end up back in mom and dad's house. And ultimately, they would have been better off if they'd just, stayed home when they were 18, and just trying to help them through that process. And so got this online course that's up and teachable. And I started working with Joshua Hale and Kara back during the summer. And we ran Facebook ads for a few months, and we generated some leads. And we've got a whole funnel built, and it's not that part of it's working really well and part of it's not working so well. And unfortunately, it's the revenue generating part that is not meeting right now. So that's why I wanted to bring this to Q&A. I looked through the slides from Friday night's lecture, and one of the last ones Rich had said, okay, you spend this much and you get this many clicks and you get this many opt-ins and you make this much money. And I'm like, check, check, check. Nope. So here I am.
All right, good. So you got interest because people clicked from the ads and got to your landing page, right?
Yes.
And what happened?
Yeah, Joshua rocked it. We've got, let's see, I could even, if you'd like, I could share my
share the screen. Man.
So yeah, I put together this document yesterday, and Joshua put together the sexy graphic, which you won't be able to see, but I put a link to this document in the class chat so everybody be able to see that. And so essentially, we start off with our Facebook ad, and the Facebook ad I've actually got up right here, and it's got this little video. Joshua's messaging me. What is he messaging? Anyway, so we got this video, and feel free to chime in, Joshua, if you can. But
I just sent you a link to the funnel document, and you'd be able to zoom in and kind of go through step by step there.
Oh, sweet. Very good. Well, here's the ad. And the ad, once people click on it, will actually take them to our lead magnet. So we've got a PDF called The 6 Huge Mistakes We Made in College and How Your Student Can Avoid Them. This was based on a mini course that Beth and I wrote in Teachable here. We called the Career Choice Crash Course, and we decided that it would just, having them get into a teachable course wouldn't work as a lead magnet. So we took this material and converted it back into this PDF, and we've got links from the PDF to other content, either blog posts that we wrote or articles that kind of support our argument.
So that was Jim going through his marketing funnel, and what was great about this was that he was able to join Rich live, go through the whole process, and to then get feedback. Tyler jumped in. He had some great suggestions, and the whole community was able to give feedback on this funnel. And really, when it comes down to working on marketing projects like that, fresh eyes is really valuable, and especially just to get some people outside of the project, just as an audience member seeing this for the first time, what is standing out to them. And right after that, where I stopped, Agnieszka jumped in and said, talked about the colors and how yellow might be communicated as warning. And when we're building trust at the top of the funnel, meaning when people are just coming in contact with your brand before they start diving deep and getting more familiar and building trust, that yellow might not be the best color for that, because you want to build trust instead of putting them on defense, on warning. Tyler, what did you think about that Q&A?
Yeah, just make sure watching the people raising their hands in the panelist room there.
Got it.
And I think, again, that I'm really proud, or however you want to say it, I admire Jim for bringing all these issues to the table. I know it can even be painful, struggling with these issues, but it's helping other people who aren't even contributing or chiming in, like myself, who sometimes just jumps in without maybe having enough information, and throw something out there, because maybe, that's what he's doing. He's trying to get feedback. He's kind of fishing into a pool of, like you said, fresh eyes. And he's not saying, hey, Josh and Kara are not doing, what I want them to do here. You guys are trying to figure out a problem, and you have a community of people that can offer advice. Like Richard, I think I was just listening to season 1 lecture from this week, but a year ago. And he was, saying how valuable that is, obviously, to be able to have a community of people to brainstorm with. I do that with my current job, a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes somebody comes in and finds the solution on the screen sticking right in front of you, and you're just over in a different perspective or a different direction, so you don't necessarily see that. And I was scrolling through the old Fed books the other day, and I saw Jim Hood talking with Brett Venat about test drive your future, and that just made me smile. I was really happy to see that that's happening, and that part of the funnel, plugging that kind of plug into what you guys already have, I think is going to streamline things really, and kind of uncongest that funnel, as Richard was saying. And so it's going to be exciting to see how this unfolds. And again, I'm proud of Jim and his determination to kind of bring this thing out over several years, a decade now, of kind of bringing this to this point, and taking that next step and going and actually starting to produce content at the front end of this funnel. And then there's, a couple other bullet points that could be implemented as far as that lead magnet. And so, I would like to learn more about the whole situation, but hey, I am learning more about it, and with things like that you were sharing, Joshua, and I have to go maybe become a Patreon of Brett Venat now. Not that I have been procrastinating that, but maybe it's the right time to start subscribing to Brett's Patreon as well. So
well, I can attest. Yeah, I can attest it's well worth that. And it was great because Jim got on Brett's radar through this. It was through a previous mastermind on Tuesday night. And so Brett realized that he needed to share more of the pain points of the whole schooling process with his audience. Jim is his whole course is designed on those pain points. And so they were a perfect match. Jim then bumped up into accessing influencer marketing and getting his whole system, his whole product broadcasts on a podcast. And so just like what you said, I'm really excited about that organic funnel or organic traffic that's going to be entering into his funnel that we created in order to generate some eyes on his product, because it is so valuable. And being fully transparent, to display, I'm sure Jim felt the same way, but to display your hard work publicly like that, I was definitely feeling a bit vulnerable, just because this the fear aspects of your mind is looking at things as criticism. But as we're learning in autonomy, when you have a safe environment full of trust and respect, that you're able to share your projects, your babies that you're working on, and get that critical feedback in order to strengthen the weaknesses. So really proud of Jim for putting himself out there, and I was really happy with all the feedback that we got, and I'm excited to see Jim have a successful 2020 with his program. Welcome, Michael and Chris. Good morning. Thanks for hopping in here. How you guys doing today?
Howdy.
Howdy. Mike, how are you in Acapulco?
I'm doing great, guys. Wonderful
Awesome.
to be here, and thanks so much.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you on. We're gonna just carry on through the week, and then at the end we're gonna talk a bit about what projects we're working on. So I look forward to hearing more about that from both of you. Before we move on, I really want to give a shout out to Hedda Marie. She lost her partner this last week, and I know she got a lot of condolences from everybody in the community, but I just really wanted to reiterate like how much of an impact she has on those here in the community, and that she has a lot of love and support as she goes through this challenging time. So just want to give her a quick hello, and I look forward to talking to you when the time is ready. So next up, going on in the timeline of this last week, Rich, Lisa, Agnieszka, and we had a discussion with G. Edward Griffin, and can't say too much about it other than the fact that things are in the works to help.
Oh, you can, Joshua. There's always a choice. Come on, man. Don't keep us in suspense.
All right. Well, G. Edward Griffin, he has the Red Pill University. We're well aware of that, and they've been working on getting that up off the ground. Right now, it really just kind of hosts the presentations from the previous Red Pill expos, and their vision is to have a university where people can go there and self-educate in order to help strengthen themselves and learn and continue with their self-awareness path. And so we're talking to Griffin, and we are working on creating some value from autonomy to be able to add to his Red Pill University. Just going to leave it right there. Really excited about it. Really great to talk to such a legend and to be working with him in that fashion. He's as wonderful off the stage as he is on. Next up,
Joshua, are these plans coming in that I suppose we're projecting 2020 now? This is we're all looking at January for these to start taking effect?
Yeah. We've been working on this for 3 months now, so everything moves at its own speed, and we're close. We're really close. So hopefully, we'll have a public announcement about that soon.
I'm not going to sleep tonight now, wondering what this is going to be about.
It's good. It's good. So rest assured, Chris. It's going to be good for you and me. Well, next up this last week, me and Tony had a discovery call with Michael Badnarik. Richard got a message and saying that Badnarik's website was down and he had enough. So in true fashion, this is really what we're building and working towards with Autonomy Unlimited, is being able to help out those with projects that need improvement. And Michael Badnarik has he's got more web experience than I've probably been alive. And so for him to be trusting us with creating a new website for him is quite an honor. And I'm really excited to share more about this as it develops. But me and Tony are in the developing phase of designing a brand new website for him so that he can showcase his work. And those that want to help out with that project, go ahead and send me a DM, and I'll try and see where there's some areas that could use some support. I guess I'll segue into Autonomy Unlimited. So Rich brought this up in last night's lecture, and we can talk about it because he talked about it. So Autonomy Unlimited is going to be a growth company that provides services, products, and consulting to entrepreneurs, small to medium-sized businesses, to systematically increase their customer satisfaction and revenue. I love that description. It really paints a picture about what we're going to be achieving here in the upcoming future. There's so many freedom-focused projects out there that could use some help with marketing, with how they're coming across to their audiences. And we're gaining the skills here in Autonomy to be able to do that, to help others. And so not only are we able to help external businesses, but graduates of Autonomy, as it says, can readily intersect their skills with ongoing streams of opportunity attracted by Autonomy Unlimited. So this is giving a platform for Autonomy graduates to be able to have real world experience with projects that are moving the needle of freedom just a little bit further. And it's going to really create a fantastic atmosphere of growth for students, but also being able to get real world projects and experience. So really excited about this. And this Michael Badnarik project is a perfect example of that. So we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks.
I've got Badnarik's book right here, as a matter of fact. Good to Be King, a classic, essential reading for absolutely everybody. And it's funny, if you know Badnarik the way we do, and you're reading the words the way he words, you can just imagine him sarcastic, especially the sarcastic parts coming. You can just hear his voice coming through the pages. Fantastic book.
And I got the audiobook of that, and he reads it, so I can literally hear him, his dripping sarcasm. Tyler?
Well, I remember about a decade ago, somehow I could remember, if I thought hard enough, probably how I came across his series on the Constitution class. I think it's still on YouTube. And so if I could provide any value back to Michael with part of that project, let me know if you see anything that might fall in my scope. So yeah, I think that Autonomy Unlimited is really kind of that light, or it's at least an exit point, or not even an exit point, but a next step for people to take. It's not just leaving you at the end of a course and saying, all right, now good luck, and let us know how it goes. And that's going to happen too, obviously, with people just naturally. But this is the people that want to kind of integrate more and have a way to actually make it a lot more real, rather than kind of like up here, like this idea that you brought to the table, to my table. I mean, I heard about it through Joshua, this project, and it really got me thinking and motivated to start taking action on some of my ideas to be ready. Even though I probably should have been doing that anyway, it's a great example of leadership and mentorship from everyone who's involved with that project.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And that his 8-hour Constitution course is something I would love to be able to help him receive credit for, because right now it's just up on somebody else's channel on YouTube. And that course, I mean, I got through all 8 hours, and there is so much valuable information in there. And just to see Badneric's personality help nail that, hammer that nail in of the important information that's in there. Yeah, let's brainstorm on how we can help him make that more accessible and bite-sized for the audience, so that more people can become aware of how important the Constitution is.
I was fortunate enough last summer to make the most ideal type of business transaction with anyone that can be made, and that is cash in hand. Yeah, I told him, I said, I could have ordered your book on Amazon or elsewhere, but we, my wife and my family and I, we brought him out to lunch in Austin last summer, and I just, said, hey, here you go, in your pocket, but sign it for me by all means. And he was happy to do that. I'm a big fan of what is called agorism or agorism, however you want to pronounce it. And that, of course, that's worthy of its own separate topic. We could spend an hour talking about that alone, but that's just one example of many important topics that are constantly brought up here every day, weekly, always. So yeah, Badneric's a very interesting character, really nice guy. We're very lucky to be able to work with him and help him out as the way we have been.
And we got some presentations of his inside the course, so make sure to go check those out if you haven't seen them already. Well, this week Rich recorded a new episode on History Connected. I was in meetings for it, so I wasn't able to join them live, him in the audience live. Tyler, did you able to catch that, and can you say anything about it?
I hope so. I honestly, I did catch it, and I liked the production. It was information that I'm not totally familiar with. So I tracked it while I was watching it in my own brain model, and I'm still letting that marinate, honestly. And, I would like to dig a little bit more on those topics, and I like that Richard opened up that door. So that's, I think, the whole idea, right, behind the series is not just let's all keep repeating the same things that we've all been saying or whatever, and then bringing in new things that you might not have heard of. And in this one, Richard, I didn't think that he really brought his opinion on the direction one way or the other about the book that was brought up, which was what was the book called again? The Inanimate and the Animate. The Animate and the Inanimate. I did listen to a couple chapters with one of the readers that Joshua and I might cover in a Tech Tuesday coming up, ways to consume information like this that you may not print out and read a PDF or sit at your computer and read a PDF, but there are ways to consume that information and tie it into your own brain model. Or you can use the history blueprint from Richard, or you can download and purchase that from him. So there's ways to consume this information and then tie it into your overall, information funnel, we could call it. And you don't have to make a decision on that one way or the other, or, necessarily know exactly what it's pointing to. But that whole connection with Matt Damon and Good Will Hunting and this William Sidis character is pretty interesting. And like I said, I don't have a lot about the actual payload to discuss besides the wrapping that it was presented in. Was very good, I thought.
Well, I'll add a couple things to that because I thought it was awesome. I really think that what Richard is doing, I think what we would say triggering complexity in regard to continuing to add to what what we're learning about and possible questions that we might have, but also a greater understanding of what is out there that most people aren't even isn't even on their radar. This idea of reserve energy, which I think today would translate into what most people are calling flow. A lot of athletes are on board with this idea, but it's a much greater idea than just flow. It is something that I really think is important, and it kind of reflects on the way that Richard is teaching this course. Where he's really kind of immersing us in a lot of information, which to some people might appear like it's just over the top. He's, kind of pushing us beyond what may be a comfortable level. But it's just like a professional athlete. When you're really getting to the top, you've really got to push yourself to get to that next level. To really be excellent, you've got to keep adding. And man, I just really I love these other topics that are interesting. And certainly this particular topic is interesting because it has those connections to a movie that won an Oscar, is noted as being one of the best movies of all time. I think I know my younger brother considers that movie to be one of the best movies of all time. And understanding that there's a lot more information behind that, and then combining that with the brain model too, and showing people how to understand this information, how to investigate who are the main characters and the people behind the scenes that really make this story really interesting. I think is one that can stimulate a lot of people's curiosity and really draw in a lot more people's interest into what we're doing and why this whole thing that we're doing is important.
Definitely. And just the way that Rich is, again, just publicly displaying his method of research like that, where he's connecting the dots for everybody to see, man, it's already changed the way my brain works. And not just, like Tyler said, accepting somebody's conclusion on a blog post, but being able to dive in and come to your own conclusions by putting together a body of evidence and drawing your own conclusion from that. So it's really valuable. And Michael, just to piggyback off of what you said, as kids, the people of history and athletes, as you were saying, were like superheroes to me. And there was no understanding of all the micro steps that they took in order to get to their achievements. But really, there are no superheroes here. And if you examine each athlete or historic famous person, they took steps, micro steps, just to get to where they're at. And any of us can do that.
I disagree with you, Joshua. Edwin Moses was a superhero. I don't care what anyone says. That shows how old I am, man. Edwin Moses was the world 400 meter record. He had held the record for the Americans, and we're talking 1984, man.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Somebody beat him, though, I'm guessing, right?
Eventually, I'm sure. Yeah.
And took that from him. Well, it goes to say, though, it's a misconception thinking that there's people that have special powers that were magically just famous, successful, or being able to achieve things that we all can't. And this History Connected is just another way of getting to see behind the scenes how these things take place and realizing, hey, I could do that too. And really, that's what autonomy is all about, is being able to share these processes with each other, and so you get a map on how to pursue things.
The whole idea of the superhero in general is a bit of a propaganda technique, in also, I think, in the sense that it teaches people it gives them the idea that their problems will be outsourced, will be solved by an external entity. And I often tell my kids, they're really into comics and Marvel and all that, like any kid, but I tell them, as long as you realize, this is not trying, I don't know, but this could make you think in a way that you really shouldn't be thinking. The idea that someone else is going to come in and solve your problems. And I have this theory that is one of the many reasons that they're really pushing the whole superhero genre in Hollywood. And it just kind of ties into everything else that they're, they're the way they're trying to impose a way of thinking onto people. But because of in autonomy, what we do is we recognize these techniques of propaganda, and not necessarily there. I feel like there's predictive programming, things like that, and you learn to recognize them. Then they have no power, control over you. Sorry, just my thought on that idea.
Absolutely. I just chime in on that too. I think, they're always trying to, kind of reinforce dependency and, divide and conquer and predictive programming. I think all those three are through and through on all these superhero films. I just happened to watch Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it was 2 the other night, and man, I could not believe how much negative kind of relationship reinforcement was going on with, reinforcing the idea of not trusting anybody. I mean, oh my God, that movie, I just couldn't believe how poorly they treat each other.
As a team, right? Like
Yeah.
as the group, the hero group. Yeah.
And I know, we're all Star Wars fans. A lot of us are here, but, franchises like Star Wars are no exception. And I don't want to get into it today, but, Disney, you cannot trust Disney. They cannot be trusted. Anything that comes from Disney, you need to put on your tinfoil hat, and not but the anti-propaganda. Just brace yourself. And when you see it, it does okay. Now, the problem is you need to explain to your kids, okay, that idea there that they just expressed, that's a bunch of BS. Anyway,
I can't
where's
imagine.
Jay Dyer when you need him?
I'm beginning to imagine how many processes of marketing that Disney has at its fingertips, and it must go through so much preparation and before they put things out there publicly. So we're just now beginning to understand the scope of marketing and the do's and don'ts, and we'll cover that here in a second when we go through the lecture slides. But it's a huge process. And one more thing about movies and introducing those ideas out to the public. I was living in Guam in my 20s, and it dawned on me because I was a day and a half ahead of America in the time zones. And The Matrix came out, and I got to see that movie, and I visualized that idea of the Matrix coming out and sweeping around the planet as it hit those theaters, and this idea being spread around like that. It really gave me a visual conception of how powerful these memes, these ideas are as they sweep across the world. And this is a continuous thing. Marvel has superheroes movies lined up. I saw through 2026 was what was like publicly known, with probably like 5, 6, 7 superheroes movies coming out a year. So they got a plan. They're delivering through their marketing channels, and people are just eating it up. They can't get enough.
Yeah, well,
Sorry, one last
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, just one final thought on that is just what we're talking about. Tell our kids, I don't want to prohibit them from watching anything by all means. Just tell them, explain these things to them as they're exposed to it. And I don't see, I think that would be fine. Just enjoy it, recognize it.
You said one final thought. I just didn't know if that meant that none of us could also add something.
My final thought.
That, I think there's a way to interpret these things that is, healthy. I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said, but if you take something like The Lion King, which we watched recently, like the modernized version, which you could definitely question a lot of the things being, portrayed there in that flick, or any of the kind of more esoteric themes going on. But I think, the overall story is like the hero's journey, but not the heroes that you guys are talking about, but becoming your own hero and discovering, I think when his dad's in the clouds and he says, you have to remember who you are, and that part of those stories, I don't think should just be thrown out as this is all satanic, Disney is evil. There's some things in there that are really actually quite powerful occult, or, more allegorical stories from esoteric, more like wisdom schools of teaching. And, Disney was a Rosicrucian, an occultist who studied these things. And Walt Disney himself, I don't mean like all of Disney is Rosicrucian. But they were, stemming from the occult. If you look at Fantasia and other things like that, there's a lot of symbolism going on there. To just interpret it as only evil, I think would be a mistake. But I don't disagree with what you guys are saying and the agenda to externalize the hero, that it's always something, a savior figure that's going to come save you, putting you in kind of a victim mindset, and also, just kind of apathetically waiting for a hero. But if you can internalize that message and kind of look at it more of the allegory, that they're not multiple figures on the screen, it's all one character, it's all you, there are certain movies that can be interpreted like that, such as The Lion King, where it's really about just his journey to becoming, to realize his full potential, and to connect with what we really are, and go on that journey of asking those questions, those big questions of who and what we really are. So, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. I just wanted to throw in the spin on, the hero's journey doesn't have to be only externalized. You can internalize that and walk your own hero's path.
Wise words.
I make 2 points here. One is, I don't know if you've read the book King, Lover, Magician, Warrior, but it talks about the 4 archetypes of manhood. The hero is actually an immature archetype, and that's something that I think we need to consider, is that all of the thing, pretty much all the media is encouraging kind of a adolescence that is perpetual, that people are essentially dependent as children their entire lives. I think the celebrities, the politicians, pretty much everybody that's in the media is demonstrating immature, boy-like shadow archetypes, and and certainly that's something to be aware of. I would agree with you, Tyler, that there are always good things, because any good propaganda has to use truth to steer people towards the lies. So it might be 90% truth and 10% lies, but you got to be aware of where those lies are, and why they're so important. The second thing is we covered the book Propaganda in one of Richard's, I can't remember the name of the
Smart Reads.
Smart Reads, yeah. And one of the things that Bernays said in that is movies are the greatest propaganda, and that was 1928 when that book was written. So he definitely foresaw the power of movies.
Very valid. Thanks everybody for that. That was enlightening. Chris, this last week you had an interview with Amanda Price. We're going to show
Amanda Price.
We're going to show a short clip of that, and then I'd love to get you to tell us a little bit about the backstory of how that came together.
communication. You've given workshops, and a lot of people have been participating in them. I managed to catch one of them. I'm sorry I didn't catch the second two, plus the exercises that you've been doing. Have you done 3 so far? 3 where you apply it, or did you just finish the 4th one the other day? I know there's 3 that's been done.
I've done 3 practice. I've led 3 practice sessions. Yeah, in addition to three components of the mini course that I kicked off when I joined Autonomy. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the basics. For anyone who may not know what the nonviolent communication is, or we call it NVC, what is it and why is it important?
Thank you for asking that question, Chris. I've been working on, what is the elevator pitch for something that's so meaningful and complex and has so many arms and threads. And as I think about it, the best way I can describe it, Chris, beyond anything else, is a consciousness. It's really a chosen way of being and showing up in the world, where what matters most is human connection. It's the idea of getting to a place where we can voluntarily and joyfully give and receive. And this idea that we all as human beings share the same universal needs. And when we are able to support ourselves and each other in meeting our needs, then that will empower us all to survive and thrive in this world.
I really like Amanda. So Chris, everyone, you can go check out that full interview and learn all about Amanda Price and the value that she's bringing to Autonomy. Chris, how'd the production go with that interview?
Well, I had, from a technical point of view, I gave up. I had an account with Adobe Premiere, and I didn't really need it. So I gave that up, and now this was my first video that I edited with. In the end, I've gone with OpenShot, and it's pretty simple. It didn't take me long at all. It took me to figure out. And once you work with Adobe Premiere, OpenShot is really simple, but for the things that I want to do, it was just fine.
Just some simple cleaning up of the ends, clipping off the ends, and
yeah, because I don't really need any fancy special effects. The only feature that it didn't have that I really would have liked is was able to put text on the screen, and it only lets me do a title, which is fine. But Amanda,
I got some tricks for that.
Oh, cool. Amanda did a great job explaining, because I just wanted to get, my attitude is I kind of want to do interviews and get back to the basics, because we do get quite a lot of the discussions we have in Autonomy are high level discussions. And I'm empathetic from the point of view of someone who just tuning in and may not know what we're talking about. They're going, what are these guys going on about? I remember the first time I tuned into Brett Veinott's show, School Sucks Project. I think I jumped into the middle somewhere. I mean, I can't remember what year it was, but I remember thinking, what are they talking about? And so I went back to the beginning of his show and started from the beginning. So sometimes I'm just aware of, I think it's important to backtrack and just kind of cover the bases from time to time. And Amanda did a fantastic job of doing that. And I think she's on a great path to what she's doing, and I really look forward to helping her out and seeing her website when it comes out, and keeping track of the work that she's going to do in the future.
Definitely. Yeah, me too. Well, we appreciate your interviews with people, because there's just so many people in Autonomy that you just can't get to know them all quickly, except for these interviews are a great way to do that, to be able to take a peek into people's lives and find the similarities and interests. Like Michael, we have a meeting coming up this next week because there's a couple things sparked while checking out some of your videos, and I'm excited for that meeting. But I really appreciate Chris, and keep those interviews going.
Well, tomorrow's going to be fun. I'm going to be talking to Mance Raider, Free Man Beyond the Wall. So we're going to have a really fun discussion tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, Chris, I just wanted to say, I try and catch at least a 5 or 10 minute clip of all the different videos that people are putting out. I started watching that one, and man, I tell you, you really have a knack for this, because I ended up watching the whole thing. The way that you and Amanda interacted in regard to kind of the give and take and kind of some of the situations that came about during that interview, I really thought that that really grabbed me, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I also
Yeah,
wanted to point
cool,
out
Michael.
something.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm glad. I like that. Yeah, you couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was some real catching things about it that made it interesting and just easy to watch, and that's really the magic that you need to make it interesting. But I did want to point out that this is one of the things that I really love about autonomy, is that there's nothing that goes unobserved. And we've even got a discussion at the moment going on, and Tyler's contributed to this, and actually I think he's initiated it, was about NVC and some of the questions about NVC, and maybe some of the strengths as well as weaknesses. I really do. I mean, I'm involved in the NVC weekly kind of course or class that's going on that Amanda's taking, and I see it as incredibly valuable. But there are some things about NVC that maybe that people don't like, and we're looking into those too, and having those discussions and stuff. And it is, man, I love the way that we go about approaching it, because it isn't necessarily about being triggered or having emotional reaction to what's out there, but actually digging into the information and looking at the grammar, looking at the logic behind what these things are, and being able to really do the research and have the discussions about what's valuable and what's not valuable, and being able to really take it to that next level that makes it so much more valuable to the people that it's valuable for.
Yeah, the art of nonviolent communication is something that absolutely everybody needs to be aware of and apply it to their normal lives. And credits to Richard and Lisa. Yeah, I had never heard of it until making my way through Peace Revolution podcast at their website, tragedyandhope.com. I'd never heard of it. And then, they did a whole podcast on it, and bam, it was on my radar. So it's been something that I've been, exploring here and there when I can ever since.
Same here, Chris.
I don't know. I think that people pick up nonviolent communication along the way as like a tool that sounds like it fits in with the libertarian philosophy and idealism of like it's basically, in my opinion, if you really break it down, there's a lot of contradictions from the presuppositions that I'm bringing to the table with nonviolent communication. So I don't mind breaking those down or going into those conversations, and that's what we're doing in the Discord. But I personally don't think that it's something that everybody should just pick up and start using it right away. I think they should investigate it thoroughly.
Yeah, well, it brings a framework, but when you, as Amanda just described in that, it's really a consciousness. It's a perceptual lens to see the world with. If you just take the framework and try to use this method on others, it's not nonviolent communication. So definitely, it's a tool.
Something that Richard pointed out in the lecture last night. You need empathy to really be able to detect the needs that your customer may want or may not even notice. And as far as marketing and sales, it's kind of being able to put yourself in the position of the customer. That is an important tool that can be used. And I see that I think what NVC is trying to bring to people is that opportunity to have that empathy and be able to really dig up those needs. So I think it is important, but I do keep in mind that that what Tyler's pointing out there, that there are,
Well,
there are
empathy
always
doesn't
strengths and
come
weaknesses.
from NVC. I mean, I think that's putting something before something else that doesn't belong there. Like, empathy doesn't stem from nonviolent communication. The premise of nonviolent communication, I don't see how that necessarily derives empathy. I think empathy starts from a process that begins, internally, first of all, caring for yourself. And you can label all these things as nonviolent communication, but what I mean is like a contradiction, such as one of the premises that nonviolent communication puts forth is that you shouldn't use moral judgment when using nonviolent communication against others. So you shouldn't be using moral judgment. Well, calling something violent is a moral judgment. So you can't claim that there's something that's morally wrong, such as violence, but then say that you shouldn't be using moral judgment. That, to me, is just a contradiction. It's not like I'm angry about that. It's just when there's a contradiction like that, to me, I can't use that tool and say, this is the tool. Like, I agree with empathy. I agree with meeting needs. I agree with compassion. So again, going back to, just because I'm saying I don't agree with NVC doesn't mean I think we should be assholes to everybody either. I'm not arguing the opposite. I'm finding a contradiction, and that has
Oh
to be
yeah,
dealt
Tyler,
with.
we're gonna have to get you and Amanda together for a little roundtable discussion. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah, I would love to be there as well.
I've
'Cause-
talked to Amanda, and she kind of put it that it shouldn't be used in every situation. We did come to that agreement that maybe it's not for every situation. So in a business transaction, but kind of to segue, I'm looking forward to Robert Podolsky's course on ethics, because I think that will add, that's going to be a required part of the course as far as what I heard last night. And that'll add another point of view from this perspective of an ethical standpoint and more of a philosophical debate to open up into that discussion of how communication should be and how our presuppositions build our worldview, where some people's worldview could be built up to see things in a more moral relativistic way, or that certain axioms are this way, where if we don't agree on those fundamental axioms, then there may be reasons why we're disagreeing at the higher levels that are actually much lower level arguments. So I'm not sure if I want to go directly into a debate about NVC. I think it would be more of the underlying premises of NVC, which is what I'm kind of discovering with Michael. He shared books with me, and that's what the discussion in the Discord is about. And I see that this morning that discussion has been quite lively. So, maybe I'll have some time this afternoon to go back to that.
Yeah, I would love to continue this discussion in Discord and just share my experience with NVC as well. Let's move into going over this last week's lecture. We had a lively one last night, and the topic was writing copy that converts. We spent about 5 hours just on the entrepreneurial skill of copywriting. Anybody have any questions or epiphanies about last night's copywriting course?
I was a bit in and out last night. I've been reviewing the copywriting slides from season 1 this morning and listening to that lecture as well. I did catch quite a bit of last night's lecture. It was definitely the bulk of it on copywriting. There's a ton of content there. The slides that Joshua may be sharing here are just little tidbits. I don't want people to think like, here's a slide and that was like most of the lecture. Like these lectures are packed full of so many different angles on the slide. And Richard will even go back and forth on different concepts throughout. So even just if you're, like Chris said, you're watching this and going, what are these guys talking about? And you're kind of sitting there with the arms folded, what the hell? This is not just something that was picked apart in 5 minutes and, here's the formula, now go do it. These lectures are very long format where it's not just a step-by-step process for everybody either to take. But these copywriting skills, to me, it's opening up a whole new view on how to communicate with people that does relate back immediately to what we were just talking about, to ethics, morals, and not that slimy, salesy feeling that everybody thinks about when they start thinking about sales. That, writing copy in a way that's done with, your authenticity and your morality kept in mind and your ethics is definitely possible. And it doesn't have to be slimy. And I can actually think of a lot of examples out there of people providing constant value, that it doesn't feel slimy at all. And so that was another big point of the lecture, was just value-driven sales, or value-driven content, or value-driven lead magnets, and this kind of new world way of doing things in business, rather than that old kind of slimy sales feeling that people get. And it's really definitely opened my eyes to new possibilities.
Edward Bernays wrote the book on propaganda, and really that's been mainstream advertising's Bible on how to influence and steer the general population. And yeah, what we learned last night, just like what this slide presents, is the ethics of copywriting. And you don't have to use manipulation in order to produce results. And these are some easy checklists on are you using copywriting for good, or are you trying to cause a outcome that the other person would regret. And it's, as it says, it's something we do for people. It's not something we do to people. To do for provides useful information. To do to asks for value without providing something in return. If marketing is cringy, it's not providing value.
Yeah, that slide is kind of a microcosm of the whole course. It's really the idea of copywriting as being something that's so valuable to any business that it should be considered like an accountant. You should probably have a copywriter before you have your accountant. And the fact that most people, even in business, don't know what copywriting is or don't know the value of copywriting, to me, just demonstrates how valuable this course is. And really the fact that there's no universities teaching this, should really give you
every email
an idea of why we're off on such a weird tangent in the world, is because we don't understand what is really valuable versus what is really valuable.
Right. Every email that we write, every Facebook post that we do, it's all copywriting. Every time we use writing to interact with the world, there's a method to apply to make effective copywriting. And it's not just something that, again, it's not something you're doing to people. It's doing something for people. And when you really are able to provide value to yourself and those around you, and continuously do so, you end up with win-win outcomes. And really that's my own compass. I'm always striving for a win-win outcome. If it turns out to where I win and they lose, that's not the desired outcome that I want to have in my life, because I only win when we all win. And so copywriting is an excellent skill to become aware of and to hone, because it achieves better results. And just a few years ago, before the autonomy course, I was like, I'm no good at copywriting. That was what I told people. And and Rich really laid out that landscape, saying everything you do is copywriting, every way that you interact with the world. So for me, just discrediting, saying I was no good at it and I'd rather outsource that, it's really not true. It's just that it's an area that could be developed into becoming stronger in my toolbox. There are professionals out there that could do it way better and easier, and I do love working with them. But the better I understand the skill of copywriting, the easier it is I can work with professionals to get desired results too. Next slide. And this kind of breaks down what it is as well. Apply this to your next email. Apply this to your next Facebook post.
Yeah, I like that this point is driven home several times, again, not just in this one slide, but throughout the presentation, throughout even before this, is offering that, maybe I should let the professionals speak. Joshua, you should jump in and chime in more on this slide, but, offering more instead of, what your product is and all the little technical details of it, and the technical specs being like high on the list of what people should see, rather than, like how it's going to help them or what it can do for them. And, I'm just a young Padawan again, so I'm just learning these things. But Joshua, what are some of the bigger points on that I'm not explaining properly?
Well, typically this is flipped for everybody. Business owners, people trying to display or share their services and products with the world. Usually they're starting with this is what I got. You got to check it out. It has all these features. And when that hits people, it's the opposite of how you attract people, because people are bombarded all day long with what. There's a war out there fighting for people's attention, and people naturally have these brick walls that come up when information's coming at them in a method that's not speaking to them. And the why is what is that method, is how you get through that brick wall, because that person has problems, they need solutions, they're going through their day. In their world, they are that hero. Like, they wake up in the morning and they're looking for guides to help them with their problems. And if you're just out there with a bullhorn while they're walking by saying what you got, that wall comes up. But if you're out there and you're like, hey, if you have this problem and you can't get any sleep at night because you're constantly thinking about it, that like speaks to them. And when you have that displayed on a landing page or a website, immediately you're speaking to the why your solution would be beneficial for them, and it gets their attention. They lean in, and you continue from the why once you have their attention hooked, and then you explain how this could help them. This could get you to work faster. This could help you read faster. This could benefit you in your life in a multitude of ways, and you explain how that does. And then by that point, they're really looking closely at what you have to offer, and then you come in with saying, this is my product, and this is how you can get it for yourself. And it's a proven method, and it's basically the opposite of how we naturally think about sharing that with others.
Joshua, are you suggesting using the chicken is a bad way to get people's attention? Is that what you're telling me?
That is a good way to get someone to stop scrolling on their feed.
You know, it's a good point you're making.
If you could follow up with the why you just did that, you would keep our attention.
But, take pop-ups, for example. I hate them. And in fact, if I get a pop-up, I will make a conscious effort to not give whoever's throwing a pop-up at me to not do business with them.
Well, I think, being a seasoned professional and an entrepreneur for a long time, I just did a presentation a couple weeks ago and essentially fell into that very trap. I was describing what and how rather than why. And, I think it is something that for professionals, that's what they do. They don't understand how to market, how to conduct sales. And so what their job is to do is do the how and the what. And that's what their profession is based on. And the fact that, so few people in business understand this as being a real key to how to communicate to your customer value, man, I mean, this is some magical stuff. This is like, pounding your head against the wall and then understanding, oh, here's the key to the door. It's right over here. I mean, it is such a profound bit of information that, if practiced properly, can change everything. And so, there's so many businesses out there that, go bankrupt. I think it's, 95% of small businesses go under in the first 5 years. This is probably one of the reasons why. They don't have the cash flow. They don't understand how to market. They don't understand how to convey value to the people that actually need that value. And that's an important thing to consider that, unfortunately, most don't know.
Absolutely. And if you want to hear a better explanation of why is important, check out Simon Sinek's TED Talk, Start With Why. He goes through and tells you step by step how to flip that script so that your audience leans in instead of leans away from that bullhorn you got.
Joshua, how do you spell that? Simon Sinek, with an S or with a C? C-Y?
Sinek. And
cool. I'll check it out.
Might actually be coming up. I know we covered this in last year's or in the last season, so I might be giving away something that's coming up, but definitely worth a watch several times because of how powerful that is. Well, fantastic. Last night's lecture was jam-packed. There's no way that we can really flesh it out enough to fill those 5 hours that Rich just laid down value consecutively. So definitely worth a watch. I learned a lot just watching it, going through it for a second time. And excited for the Q&A on Sunday to talk more about copywriting, because I hope it planted a seed in everyone's mind that you have the ability to do this. You're already doing this, and there's ways to improve your success with your copywriting. And once you learn that you can do this, you can be a copywriter, and there is plenty of work out there to be able to work from home, work online, and be your own boss through acquiring this skill and getting skillful with it. Well, in this coming week, we have upcoming interview with Chris McCoy. He's a local entrepreneur here in Bellingham. He owns a company called Kombucha Town, and he is, I think he hit $1 million in his revenue last year, and he's really trying to break through that glass ceiling. He said it's tough. He has his kombucha all along the West Coast. Is popping up in the East Coast, so his distribution is getting wider and wider as we speak. And he's talking to a very big distribution company, and we're going to be having him on as an entrepreneur to talk about like all the steps it took for him to start his own business. He did this from the ground up himself, and we'll be able to ask him questions just on what it means to be an entrepreneur, and what are some of those blind spots that we don't know about in order to take an idea to a product to making it go national and even global. His product just showed up in Dubai. That's what he was stoked about a couple of weeks ago, because the shipment made it all the way to Dubai in one piece without sinking, and now his product's like getting out there in the world. Kombucha Town is honestly my favorite beverage. I'm not just saying that because he's my buddy, but because kombucha is good for you. When I gave up sugar and soda, I thought I was going to have to give up carbonated drinks. And to my pleasure, I found kombucha, and I really enjoy what it's brought into my life. So Monday, look forward to this interview with Chris McCoy from Kombucha Town, and I hope you can join us to join the conversation live during the interview. Well, with the remaining time, I really wanted to cover what individual projects that we got going on. We're now 12 weeks in through Autonomy, and I know a lot of ideas have been started in our heads. A lot of support and resources have become available for people, and I really want to hear what everyone's working on here on the call, and just to see what 12 weeks you've been able to accomplish. Michael, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I'm rather ambitious at this point. You know, I've got a lot of different things going on. I got 3 main projects that I'm working on, but I've also I wanted to give a shout out to a project that I'm doing with a bunch of our other students, and that's called Raising Excellence as a podcast, and that's going to start, I think, this coming week. I think we're going to start rolling that out. And that should be some really awesome stuff, because we got 6 different people that have different backgrounds. They're all talking about raising excellence and helping people in different ways, especially kind of the psychological landscape that's out there. How to deal with all the hardships that come about. But in addition to that, I've got a project I call Local Dynamo. That's kind of a local community thing. I've got the Anarchapulco Experience, which is an event during Anarchapulco or around Anarchapulco. And then I've got my Ethical Emergence course, which is something else I'm doing. And of course, everybody, I've got a lot of help from everybody in the course, which is taken me many miles. I mean, I've had stumbling blocks that I've been stumbling over for months, possibly years, that have been resolved because of the people in this course. And I've got to say, I'm thrilled to be a part of anything and everything going on in autonomy. It's awesome, and I don't know. It's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, we're really happy that you're here, because you're bringing a lot of resources yourself and ideas to the table. Christopher, what you got cooking?
I've got a few interviews lined up this week, actually, and I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow I'm talking to Pete, so that's going to be fun. Wednesday I'm talking to Brett. And Jim and I, we keep missing each other, but, Jim Hood has got to get on. We're really getting him out there. He spoke to Brett a few days ago, and I just saw that that's up. I really look forward to listening to that one. And yeah, test drive your future. We gotta get it on my site and let the world know. And if anyone missed Brett's, they'll catch it on mine. I'm trying to move over to BitChute. I don't, we're in Autonomy as well. We're trying to get all away from YouTube over to BitChute. So I was looking at the notes that you guys were talking about in our channel here on the Do It Live, and I saw that little tutorial you put up, Joshua. And yeah, the guy went went very quickly, but it was enough. I get it. So I want to start applying that and see what I can do to get one direct channel there, where eventually we can wean ourselves away from YouTube altogether. And I'm also trying to work on how to get direct uploads onto my site, and I'm trying to improve the Patreon page. I haven't worked out all of that yet. So that's a lot that I've got going on, and I'm hoping to go out of 2019 with a bang. Hopefully I've got 4 or 5 more interviews I can do to get onto my site, and to go out strong, and then kind of reinvent myself, figure out what I'm going to do for 2020 and how I'm going to move forward. So that's what's going on my end.
Awesome. And your podcast was originally came out of season 1, right? You had the idea, you got some resources, and then you nailed James Corbett as one of your first interviewers.
Yeah. And so, I'm really enjoying adding content. And one of my objectives as well is to actually create some content myself. I talk to other people, and really they're the ones providing the content. I just get whatever they have to say out to the world. So I have a few ideas myself of creating my own content, and yeah, just moving forward, trying to get, provide information that people can find valuable.
Well, as Michael said earlier, you've definitely improved. You can go back and see some of the season 1 interviews Chris put on. It was good back then, and it's becoming great. So keep on trucking, my friend. That reminded me, Get Autonomy is on BitChute, and I did want to show this little tidbit, something I learned. So Google likes to give suggestions.
Can I throw in that if anyone hasn't heard it, James, speaking of James Corbett, his band did a great song about leaving YouTube and moving on over to BitChute. If anyone hasn't heard that, literally the lyrics, Corbett singing, "We're moving on over to BitChute." So yeah, I definitely encourage, I can't remember the name of his band, but yeah, the video, it's got a music video and everything.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Autonomy is now on BitChute. I was starting to get some of the backfill of episodes back up over there, and just wanted to show Google stopped suggesting keywords when you go to BitChute. So obviously they don't really want people to know about that.
Wow, I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
So Tyler, what you got cooking?
But not surprising.
Not surprising.
Yeah, not surprised, but that's pretty interesting. That's, people should go test that. Type BitChute in. Why is it not suggesting it? And just ask yourself why that is in our world, That's pretty interesting. On the number 1 search engine, BitChute's not unknown or unheard of, What's going on there? But yeah, I'm creating some more content. I've got to wrap up the year. I'm not sure how much of the series I've been working on called Falling into the Movement Traps will be added to this year. The next step in that series is more of the social engineering aspect of how different movements throughout history, or even modern recent movements, can be, top-down manipulated. And even if they are grassroots movements that, are naturally occurring or a part of an evolutionary process towards something, a lot of the time those things will be, manipulated from the top down eventually, if not from the beginning. And there's plenty of examples of this in recent history that can be pulled from. And so I'm going to try to give a fresh take on that and try to tie it into what I see as a problem in a lot of the quote unquote freedom movements, which in some cases can end up just turning out to be more of like a different kind of movement. We'll keep it PG or G, I guess, here. But you can think of other kinds of movements that may not be as well, they are beneficial to our health and well-being, right? But no one wants to discuss them or really be around them for long periods of time. It's a strange, far off analogy. But besides that, me and my family are, currently there's a situation going on with my wife's side of the family. I don't want to get too personal with the information, but we are going to have to deal with probably some sad news in the very near future. And so there's a trip to Mexico we have on the horizon to also test drive our autonomy in another country and try to pick up some Espanol. We feel like total immersion is going to be one of the better ways to learn Spanish. Like Chris, lived in Spain for many years, and whenever I'm coming up against people that we can't quite cross that divide of communication, I really wish I could learn Spanish. And out here in the Western United States, that's a big one. So we're doing a test trial run for kind of working out how would the working remote work? How would traveling for long periods of time work in another country with the 5 of us? And then to be able to take that and start doing longer period trips. So that's a big thing that's coming up. But unfortunately, like I said, we may be kind of either resituating that immediate vacation for other things that have come up, which is obviously more important to address. So besides that, the other thing is services like Chris was saying, and the struggle with getting content out on all these different platforms and all the different post-production things or pre-production things that go on that people struggle with when producing a show, or once they maybe start to scale that show up, you don't always have time to sit and do a lot of editing or post-production or slides and things like that. So this podcast is a good example of a team working on it together. Joshua does so much of the pre-production and then adds, a slide and gives me basically everything I need to just wrap that up. And then I can, get it out there and publish it. And so it's a great handoff situation that makes it so we can do it weekly and then publish it on a time schedule without things coming up in one of our lives that we can shift that weight around. And we have other people here that can do that. And so I want to bring those services to the world, to people that I want to work with, and go to them and offer services such as these that we've been discussing, these struggles. When you guys are talking about your struggles with creating content, I'm like, all right, let me just take notes on these struggles, pain points, not that I would look forward to working with like Chris, yourself, and doing, seeing what someone like you needs really helps me understand what, I could go bring to other people, and then put it through this copy, right, and make a landing page. So that's the next thing I want to get going, and not necessarily to, make money right away at it, but have the back end created so I can start having a landing page set up and just basically, do those services when I find somebody that I could provide a lot of value to. So that's it for me.
Tyler, what about falling into the movement? Just a little bit more on that. What is this going to be, a separate website, or is it going to be part of your tylerbloyer.com website?
And podcast?
Sure. So I, had been producing content since about 2015 on and off. And I took like a year to kind of digest a lot of the stuff I was bringing up earlier, like those small contradictions that came up that I couldn't really ignore with where I was at with things. And I feel like there's a lot of pitfalls that people fall into over their journey, towards freedom, towards, the model that they're trying to bring forward. And a lot of these labels and categories end up having issues internally with the people within those movements, and just the general rule of crowds when people get together and work together without using critical thinking. That's key. But groups, and this is not just like Tyler's opinion, like this is definitely like propaganda. Edward Bernays is talking about this dynamic, only he's talking about how to manipulate that dynamic. Where Gustave Le Bon, where Edward Bernays was drawing from, is, talking about the issues with crowds and how, the general tendencies of groups and things like that. So the series is about, how to navigate all this without falling into the pitfalls. Or if someone's dealing with these things now, I'm throwing a rope down to try to show them that there is, a way to navigate through that. So
I think that's an excellent idea. Sounds, because I'm easily, especially in the past, I've easily been swept into things, and then it turned out maybe it wasn't the best idea. So even in the truth movement, when things seem like an excellent idea, we need to stay on our toes. And that's a great idea. Tyler, I wanted to point out as well, don't worry about Spanish. If you're having any communication barriers, this is how you express frustration.
In Mexico.
And here's the important one. If you want to express power, like don't mess with me, man. Yeah. Sorry, I was just waiting for an excuse to pull out some of my props here. But I think it's a great idea.
And something I learned from my visit to Mexico was do the speed limit and don't rely on Google Translate.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd just like to add a thing with what Tyler was saying in regard to his thing about groups and I really came about during the Ron Paul Revolution, the first go round in 2007 and 2008, and to see kind of that movement, which was pretty significant, turn into the Tea Party, and then we had the Occupy movement, and essentially what you're talking about, Tyler, is kind of how they took what was I think a bunch of good people that were trying to do the right thing and steered them into different kind of traps that, that I think what we've got today is just kind of a development, a long-term development project of, it being steered into a direction in which, people are just really confused about what is what, and so I think you're really onto something very valuable, and I definitely encourage you to continue.
This was shared in season 1, but Gene Sharp, How to Start a Revolution. It's a documentary that's out there, but he has a textbook guide on how to start a revolution, and it can be used as a weapon by infiltrating movements and steering them in a specific way. Pretty powerful documentary, and I know he has a book on that. So definitely check that out, because once you see there's methods, then you start seeing it used in geopolitics for sure. Well, in these last couple minutes, I do want to share what I've been up to. I have really, I'm fulfilling the goals that I set out going into autonomy with. I just rebranded my business from JH Social Media to JH Marketing, because it more accurately describes the scope of the services and business that I'm providing and offering. And with that rebrand comes so many little tasks, and I've been able to really knock them out in the last couple weeks to where I got a new website up. I'll give you a little sneak preview of that. And this is putting together all of the skills that I have learned in autonomy and being able to share that service with the world. And so this is one small goal of mine to be able to get to this, because coming up is Autonomy Unlimited. I'm really excited about that project. But first I had to get my own personal brand done and underway in order to focus on Autonomy Unlimited coming out in this next 2020 year. There's so many little tasks I had to do, from swapping out my email, changing my email from JH Social Media to JH Marketing. There was lots of little tasks I had to complete in order to do that with Google, where I'm using Google's framework to be able to have my email, along with drives. Swapping out all these things took a whole lot of effort. I'd be happy to talk about that if somebody's interested in the nuances of that. And now that I'm pretty much wrapping up my own personal brand, like I said, we have a Autonomy Unlimited website coming out soon. We have the getautonomy.info website. That homepage is just about done, where it will be a blend of talking about the course, but also giving inside looks of all the student achievements and what the course entails. And that should be being released soon. And then, just lots of side projects going on. Badneric's in the works, working with Griffin. There's no shortage of things to do, and I'm actually looking forward to unplugging for the rest of today and tomorrow, just to really be able to recharge, because if I tend to work through the weekend, then my motivation and momentum is really drained in the coming week. So this was covered in the slide last night of what is your goal, like achieving happiness. I'm working hard to being successful in order to do that, but to achieve happiness, you really got to push and make some space in order to appreciate everything that you've, all the hard work you've done in order to appreciate what you got accomplished. So I'm going to be doing that for the rest of the day. My wife's vending a show with her business, and going to go down there and support her with that. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Do It Live podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Chris, Michael, Tyler, that was a really lively discussion. And even though we didn't have as many clips as we normally do, there was no shortage on great value and conversation. Join us again next week, but make sure to subscribe to us either on YouTube if you're watching here or BitChute. Make sure to spell it right so Google will let you find it. And if you want to know how to get autonomy in your life, go to getautonomy.info/ignite, and you will be able to get autonomy for your life too. See you next time.